How to create a glitch. Glitch stories. Story 1. Bizarre behavior produces bizarre results.
This happened in 2015. I discovered a long time ago that certain actions can induce strange consequences or bizarre glitches in everyday things. Often these bizarre events or occurrences are on the very edge of being glitches. Something about them strikes one as peculiar or unsettling, as if reality, but for a moment, has been overturned and the myriad sinews of it have been exposed. This story is about one such occasion. I had gotten into a habit of doing erratic habit-breaking actions, producing a pattern of behavior and then abruptly altering it. My thesis was simple: if reality was artificial, the appearance of ordinary life, being a facade, could be displaced by the puncturing of normality in a particular way. So, I quit my job as a lawyer, quit the profession entirely. I told people when they asked me what I was going to do now, something else. And I joined the ranks of the unemployed. I left a religion that I had been raised in and was devout for many years and joined one antithetical to my upbringing. I would go to grocery stores and collect random items and place them in other locations in the store just to see what would happen. I would purchase odd things like playing cards and perform magic tricks for strangers that wouldn't pan out, etc. Over time, I began to notice strange things happening. For example, 1. I tossed my phone in a park near my home, a large wooded park near the airport, and subsequently my mother was contacted by a member of the military who claims they found my phone while walking in a frigid, wet park in the middle of nowhere, returning it a few days later untouched. 2. I took a completely unplanned flight to Toronto from my smaller city. When I arrived, Toronto was unrecognizable from the air. It was 90% wilderness. When I arrived, a Chinese woman walked right through me at the airport and continued as if nothing had happened. Once on the ground, I went about my ordinary business and noticed cashiers in a McDonald's in downtown Toronto speaking Russian to customers. Walking about downtown Toronto, whenever I would ask any stranger a question, they would respond, "I'm going home." 3. After one of my convenience store outings, I was followed by about a dozen men in military uniforms, acting like robots, out of the store. I later saw a military uniformed serviceman at my place of worship. 4. After another one of my seemingly erratic outings, purchasing objects like pornography magazines and other tidbits for the purposes of placing said objects in random locations such as my place of worship, I was confronted by the religious authority at the place of worship. He then proceeded to tell me everything I had done that day in complete detail, as if he was omniscient or was observing me, despite that being impossible. He later, at a religious ceremony, abruptly told everyone that they didn't have to be there, even though participation in such services is mandatory in this religion, and promptly walked out. 5. Out of curiosity, I tried to leave the country on an unplanned flight. I purchased a ticket and planned to drive 3 hours to Ottawa to attend a passport office to renew my passport. Halfway there, I decided to have a nap in my car, exhausted. I pulled off the highway and parked my car on the side road. I fell asleep. I woke up 3 hours later with my head under the car behind the rear tire, 5 random people standing around me. This was in the middle of nowhere, rural Ontario. These people claimed that they had found me that way, impossible, the door to my car was locked, and that they had called the police. They refused to let me leave. When the police arrived, they forced me to go with them to a nearby station. I was told that I could not leave until I had family pick me up. They bought me a Subway sandwich for lunch and put me in a jail cell without explanation and held me there until I missed my flight. Suffice it to say, I believe that the system resists us acting out of character. It compels us to follow the plan, sometimes even with force. I've since rehabilitated myself and play the role I've been assigned, if only so that I can live in the relative peace and quiet complacency offers, convinced of the inherent oddness, perhaps even odiousness, of this reality. Story 2. My double shows up while I am at work. This happened in 2014. I was working late one night, accommodating a client who wanted an evening appointment. She had come with a friend as a support person. So it was the 3 of us in my office. She wanted a separation agreement because her and her husband were breaking up. I was taking notes the whole appointment. I reported the appointment started at 7 p.m. We talked for about an hour because she booked an hour of time. Most of it, she spoke while I listened and took notes. Her friend would interject periodically. Anyway, so I finished the appointment at around 8 p.m. The sun had set by this time, I could see by the large window behind my desk. When we'd finished the appointment, I went straight to my car and drove home, getting home around 8:15. Now, as a result of the fact that I had a bad neighbor, a few weeks before I had installed a security camera inside my house. He was a renter, a violent fellow prone to physical fights with his girlfriends that I could hear through the wall. And someone had slashed my tires a month earlier, so I was concerned. Anyway, as I said, when I got home it was around 8:15 p.m. I opened the door and went inside. The first thing I did once I was inside was go and check the video recorder because something felt wrong. Some of my things didn't seem to be where I left them. So, I flipped the recorder to playback mode. The monitor was triggered by movement so that only movement would cause it to record. I went backwards on the playback and it showed me entering the house around 8:15 p.m. I rewound it further and I could see that around 7:30 p.m. it recorded something. So I flipped it on. The video showed the sun was still up, shining through the front window of my house, and someone entered the front door. This person, who I couldn't make out at first, was wearing a dark jacket like I wear. This person moved into the living room and began moving objects around, from the kitchen as well. And then, after a few seconds passed, I could make out his face, it was me. I watched as he moved around a few objects and then promptly, without any further action, left through the front door again, locked it, and left. I watched this video over and over again to make sure I wasn't crazy. I could only come up with a few explanations that made sense. 1. I wasn't actually meeting with my clients from 7 to 8 p.m., and I was actually doing something else. 2. I have a double. Story 3, Losing Time. This happened in 2015. I was having a rough day. I'd been unemployed for about a year and was struggling with depression. It was about 6 a.m. and I couldn't sleep. So I decided to go for a drive. I drove north of the city about 40 minutes. There I stopped for a moment to pray. As I did so, I looked out my window and gazed at the sky. It seemed to be shimmering in a rainbow pattern with edges of sparkling light, almost as if it were a kind of membrane. I looked as it appeared to bend and twist in response to my finger, as if it was something malleable and fluid. I blacked out. My head was hurting. I pulled it up off the table in front of me. I was disoriented and had no idea where I was or how I got there. I looked around. I was in a coffee shop. A Tim Hortons in downtown. I had no idea who I was or how I got there. The people in the coffee shop were staring at me. There was a pool of drool on the table in front of me. I felt tired and confused. I stood up and staggered to the door of the coffee shop. The people watched me with hideous eyes. I stumbled back to my seat and sat down again. In my mind, I fixated on one of the patrons. A disheveled old man with a scowl on his face. I imagined that he knew me, but as the seconds passed that faded and I came to myself. I knew who I was but not how I got there. I left the coffee shop and began searching for my car. It took me 10 minutes to find it because it was parked 3 blocks away. I got in and drove home. I'd lost 3 hours, teleported with my car 45 minutes away, or I'd simply blacked out and lost time. Don't know what happened for sure,